Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website and now an online store. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com and use offer code TWiST10. And by New Relic. Visit newrelic.com/twist and see why thousands of developers worldwide don't deploy without it. And Amazon Web Services. The fastest growing, hottest startups build their businesses on Amazon Web Services. Learn more at aws.amazon.com/startups.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah, we ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis. I am here at Techstars FounderCon, which is their big yearly retreat. Over 300 founders here, all legitimate founders of startup companies, and I've basically asked to make a list of which are the most successful ones, which ones were growing the fastest, and decided to have a couple of those on the program to tell us how they're scaling and growing their business. The theme for David Cohen's FounderCon, he's the founder of Techstars, his theme this year was scale, and that's what we're going to talk about a whole bunch. And with me today on the program, Matt Ellis, who is the CEO and founder of Cloudability. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So tell us, what is Cloudability?
We manage your cloud costs and usage data. We help you find out where you're wasting money, and we help you make that move. People are used to paying for their compute upfront, and with the cloud, you have to check what you spend every day and get the most out of it every day.
And so this whole move to cloud computing was supposed to save people money. It was supposed to make it easier for people. Is it actually saving people money, and is it easier for people?
We think that for a typical case, it's about 15 to 20% more expensive.
Really?
Right now. A well-managed cloud over a well-managed colo, ignoring a lot of costs that are hard to measure. That cash basis, it can be 15 to 20% worse. Now, obviously, there are people like Netflix crunch a lot of video. They could never do what they do in a colo.
Right.
And there are some people in the colo that just couldn't take that app onto the cloud. But for a new business, it can be a little more expensive, but you get a lot in return for that. You get a huge reduction in risk, and you get a great bump in opportunity cost.
And are most startups now staying in the cloud when they hit scale, or is the cloud for your first 2 years, and then when you hit scale, it's time to build your colo, like I hear a lot of people say? Is that the conventional wisdom today?
That is the conventional wisdom. We don't think that's the right wisdom, and we're actually seeing some very large public companies go the other way in to get that kind of agility.
Really? And so are there examples of those that you can mention of people who are big public companies who are not building their own infrastructure?
Well, if you take Adobe, their Creative Cloud is now a $300 million a year business, and it's all on Amazon.
Really? So Adobe Cloud is, of course, Photoshop and
the
suite of video editing.
Yeah.
And you access it through the cloud, not by having a local copy.
Well, there is a local copy of software, but it
Right.
needs a subscription on the cloud to get the most out of it.
Got it.
And that way you can keep your assets on the cloud. There are certain features that are enhanced when they're on the cloud. And, it's grown amazingly, over 1 million paying users in less than a year.
It's amazing. Yeah, and they're paying $25 a month.
It's some of them up to $100 a month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily
Yeah.
expensive. I just
Yeah.
went through this whole thing where my team's like, hey, should we move to the cloud? And they're forcing everybody to, I guess.
Well, it's the best product, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and so people want it. So what does your startup, Cloudability, and you can check it out at cloudability.com, what do you do for somebody like Adobe?
Well, we take all the bills, and then we take all the usage data, and we help them easily tag everything. So you're associating a cost with something that drives sales. So here's a bunch of computers, they drive product X. Here's a bunch of other computers, they drive product Y. And then you can divide the costs of that on whatever hourly, daily, weekly, whatever is important to you, by what's important to your business. It could be number of paying users, it could be number of video views, number of video minutes viewed. So for example, at Cloudability, we spend 49 cents a month per free user. That's about $6 a year. And we have thousands of those free users, and we love free users. But we know the conversion rate from free to paid. We know the economics of that, the lifetime value. And so when I'm told it's $6 a year and I have 10,000 of these guys, I'm spending $60,000 a year, I know whether I'm making money on that or not. And as long as I'm making money, I'll leave that running all day long. And as soon as I'm not, I'll do something to bring the cost down or shut it down.
Because a lot of people love this freemium model of,
Right.
hey, give something away for free. So you're actually dogfooding your own service. So if Evernote was making Evernote for free, which it is,
Right.
and it was in the cloud, which I don't know if it is or it isn't, I'm assuming it is, they could know, hey, our free users cost us $7 a year. Our paid users cost us, or get us $50 a year. We need to convert 1 out of 7 to make this relationship make sense.
We actually can tell the true cost for each of our paying users as well.
How's that?
So everything that we do, we tag with a user code. And now we can look at the cost, the total costs. We divide the total costs by the volume, by the user code. Now, we don't do this day to day. It's not necessary.
Right.
But it's an exercise that you can do on the cloud, and it has real meaning, because if a customer is getting too expensive, you could look at ways to make them cheaper, and you'll save money from the day you deploy that code.
Fascinating. And so how do you charge for your business then?
We charge you 1% of what you're spending on the cloud.
Ah,
A bit like a telecom expense management product. We don't just save you money, we help make sure you're pricing that cloud right, so you're using it for the right projects.
got it. So if I were spending, whatever, $100,000 a year, $10,000 a month, something like
Right.
that, I would pay you 1%?
Yeah,
Or?
yeah.
Oh, I just
1 or
guessed it.
2%.
1 or
something like that.
2%.
It depends on the product set that you pick.
So you have to beat that 1 or 2% in terms of my knowledge and my savings.
That's easy. We typically save a customer 20% of the first month just by looking at it. I can't tell you how many times in the first year of the business we sign up a big customer and they go, "You're wrong," and we stay up all night and we manually audit the bills and find we're 38 cents out, and they were wrong. And almost nobody knows exactly how much they're spending on the cloud until they get a proper system in place.
And so I could say this group technically of servers right here are for, I don't know, processing, feature X, and then this group of servers are for Y, and then, or this group of servers is for features X, Y, and Z, and then just divide it equally 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Well, you also got to have how much they used. So what is the metric that products X, Y, and Z are running? If product X has 1,000 users, product Y has 10,000, and product Z 100,000, you need to divide by that different amount. A really good example, we'd look at a company like Netflix, who pioneered moving a large company to the cloud.
Right.
They have 2 problems. They have to crunch videos into files, and they have to serve them, or they have to serve the keys to them. And so when they're crunching a video library, they have to crunch into dozens of formats to support all the devices they're running.
Yeah.
They know the real cost, the true cash cost per video encoding.
Right.
They could do it by library, by studio, by film, and then they can see how much it's served. And they could see, I don't know if they're doing this, but they could easily see if they're making money on an individual title, a studio, or a format.
Even the cost of encoding has a cost. So
Absolutely.
If you're encoding Breaking Bad, seasons 1 through 5,
Right.
no problem. If you spend $1,000 encoding those, and you know you're going to get your money's worth.
They've been pretty public about this. I mean, they said that the thing that moved them onto the cloud in the first place was they get a petabyte of DVDs. They signed a deal with Sony or someone.
And they get a petabyte of
Yeah,
DVDs.
and they're paying for the library rights now, but it's not been encoded into the formats they can serve.
Wow.
So you better encode that real quick, but you can't have all the computers around for a petabyte of video encoding into 30 formats. And don't forget, it's not just 30 different devices. It's like 5 different levels of resolution to do with different bandwidth.
So they're making 150 copies
Yeah.
or something of
Yeah.
each one.
And then they've got to store it, and they don't know whether they can thin out the library with stuff that no one watches. I mean,
Got
it's
it.
a really speculative exercise for them. So they were able to pioneer that side of it, and then they moved the serving side onto the cloud as well.
How does Amazon and others, I assume you do this for other people besides
yeah.
Amazon?
Yeah, we support about 30 providers right now.
And so people authenticate with their Amazon or Rackspace credentials, and then you grab their reporting files.
We
and
used to do
analyze
that.
it?
Now we've worked with those partners to get an API interface where we get a key, so we don't have the keys to the kingdom. Early on, people would have to give us the keys to the kingdom.
Oh, right. You have the full
Yeah.
login so you can
Yeah.
crash the server and be blamed
We used
for
to
it.
joke if we failed, we'd have a nice little business in extortion.
Oh, yeah, we have the keys. So now there's API, you get the data.
Yeah.
How do those people feel about you? How does an Amazon Web Services feel about the fact that you're getting people to spend less?
They love it because we're not getting
Well, that
to
way,
spend
that
less.
sounds crazy.
No, because it would be if it was spending less. We give them better value and a better pricing so they understand what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. So what happens is after that initial drop in spending, we see spending rise strongly because people, there's none of this FUD about how much more expensive or cheaper the cloud is. And they know they're making money on every action. If you know you're spending $1 on Amazon, but you're making $2, well, let's spend $1 million on Amazon and make $2 million. It's really that straightforward. And so what we help, that insight is a requirement for anyone spending over $20,000 a month on cloud services. All the major vendors know that. Big companies tell them that. Medium-sized companies tell them that. They shut it off. They move somewhere else. They go in-house if they can't really understand what they're getting for $250,000 a year.
All right, when we get back from the commercial break, I want you to talk about why people are not doing distributed cloud and redundant cloud services. Like, why aren't people hosting on Rackspace and Amazon and having one be dormant and one be live? It's one of those questions I've had for a long time when we get back from these commercial breaks. Hey everybody, what a great episode we're having here, and it's brought to you by my good friends over at Squarespace. Squarespace provides beautiful, exceptional looking sites. They're easy to create. Just drag and drop, pick templates. A non-technical person can do it. We have many non-technical people here. We're semi-technical people, not developers, that's for sure, managing our websites at launch. And you can see at mobile.launch.co our sites. It works brilliantly, 24-hour, 7-day-a-week support, and now they support commerce, which is amazing. Their commerce features are just absolutely delightful. And let me just take a moment here to pull those up. And you can see here, Truth and Lies is one, and this Italian blog, Moleca, is another. Beautiful, squarespace.com, no credit card required, starts at only $8 a month, and if you decide to keep your site after the initial trial, use the offer code TWiST10. Use the offer code TWiST10. Please use that code. It's everything you need to create an exceptional website. Squarespace. Thank you so much for sponsoring the program. For a couple of years now, you guys have been great partners, and you make a great product. We use it here, and I've had at least 20 friends use the product, and they all love it, and they all thank me because it's so easy to use and so beautiful. And all these templates, by the way, are mobile, so they just flow and work perfectly on an iPad or an iPhone or an Android phone or a tablet or Surface or anything that comes out. It just works. And that's what you're looking for in a partner like Squarespace. They keep adding great new features, and you're going to love the product. I guarantee it. Thank you again to our friends at Squarespace. Let's get back to the program. Okay, when we left our hero, Matt Ellis, we were talking about his great service, Cloudability, which allows you to analyze your cloud spending, so you spend more, according to Matt, and no reason to not believe him, 20% savings or so when people sign up for it, which makes sense to me. People have no idea how to optimize it. Why aren't people building services that go across clouds? So we see the Amazon cloud goes down, once every 90 days, a bunch of sites go down. They seem to have, I don't know how many hours of downtime a year. Let's say it's a dozen or something. Which is probably less than any individual would have. So it seems like it's better than hosting for yourself. But why can't you set up your site to be distributed across Amazon and a Rackspace and then live swap it, or something?
Well, Cloudflare is a great business in helping you do that kind of thing. Yeah. Some sites have kept up during these outages because Cloudflare's cached them. So, but the reality is that, first of all, you're right. I mean, I've been doing tech ops for years, and 12 hours a year downtime is actually quite good. Yeah. But it comes with a bonus. It's not your fault. If a big company like Amazon's down, everyone else is down. Yeah. You're a little company, and Heroku's offline, and Instagram's offline.
It is. It's just like, well, we're all down. Everybody go get a cup of coffee. It's not a big deal anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. It's becoming a bigger deal. So
is it?
Oh, yeah. So a company like ours, we had lots of free users, and now we've got a few hundred big companies, each with a few hundred accounts. They don't buy the Amazon's down. They're not at work mucking around buying stuff or using Instagram. They just want to get the job done. Right. So you're starting to see an increase in the tools. Amazon's doing a lot of work in this area. But oftentimes the commercial value isn't there. So when the first big outage happened in April 2011, we called one of our early users. They were making about $100,000 a day as a retail site. Their gross profit was about $10,000 a day. And I asked the CEO if everything was okay, could we do anything to help? And he said, everything that you said we should have done was costing $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year. So I think we're in the money. And that's one of the real problems right now. Is it's still early days. There's still this area to be developed. It's not easy doing multi-data center. There's this kind of idea you can slam up a Cassandra ring or React ring, and the data it's hard.
They're not really designed for that yet.
Well, even when they are, moving large lumps of data around the place is hard.
Very expensive.
And tricky to make sure you've copied everything over and it's in sync.
Yeah, the syncing issues are big. I remember with Mahalo, we
Yeah.
had a data center in Chicago, and we actually put a dedicated 100 megabit fiber
Right.
line between them for $500 a month or something, just to make sure they were in sync.
Well, with dark fiber, you can do a different protocol like ATM, like time division,
Yeah.
where you don't have the latency issues of distance.
Yeah.
So it's requirement to do those kind of big data. And again, folk like Amazon, they've got a direct connect product now that can go direct connect to offsite storage. So you're seeing a lot of people do a kind of hybrid.
Ah, what does that mean? They put the direct storage. I could have a SAN or something.
It's
at
a
my-
10 gigabit low latency link to a data center that's physically nearby. Costs you about $2 an hour and allows you to have your storage and your colo and your compute at Amazon or vice versa, or whatever you want.
Wow.
Your base load in your colo and your peak load out in Amazon. And we see a lot of bigger companies kind of hedge their bets a little bit with this kind of thing.
Interesting. Amazon reduced the pricing for servers, dedicated servers, 80% or something a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
What was that all about? Why did they do that? Are they trying to just absolutely kill the rack business?
I don't think they're worried about that. I think they're more worried about Amazon, as like Google and Microsoft,
Oh, really?
than anyone else. I think that they are used to low margins. They're a retail-oriented business. You meet a lot of people who've come over from the retail side or the retail technology. They're spending a ton of money. I mean, building out new centers all the time, and I think they're just keeping up with development in compute. I mean, it costs money to put this stuff up. You're not just paying for what you're using; you're paying for what you're not using. That stuff, someone's got to pay for it.
Right.
But I think the time comes every so often. They might do it tactically here and there, but
It
on the
felt
whole-
like such a huge cut, though. Are they trying to keep people as lifelong cloud customers, and that's why we're seeing this aggressive price cutting occurring in the space?
Well, the price cutting, the headline's 80%, but not for the stuff that's most commonly used.
Ah.
We get to see a lot of that.
Right.
They get much more sophisticated in how to make you want to pay more up front to get a better deal as they examine workload and look at what their customers are doing. So, they're very concerned that people are going to go elsewhere. You asked, why do they love us?
Yeah.
Well, we help people get more for the same amount of money. Your computer, your laptop still costs $2,000. It did that 20 years ago. It's
Right.
1,000 times faster. You're spending as much as you can on compute to make you as efficient as you can. And they understand that. So the more they give, people spend, they commit more, they have a longer term relationship, they're more satisfied, they're less likely to go in-house or to another provider.
It's like induced traffic. You add more lanes, people just start driving more to the movies and having longer commutes.
Totally. The economists will talk about cotton and coal. And when those two commodities became orders of magnitude cheaper, the volumes shot up even more than the price went down.
Ah, interesting. So people, put cotton and coal at a lower price.
Totally.
And people said, okay, let's make the house warmer and let's get more, I want to have a couple extra sweaters.
Exactly, because I can afford it.
Right.
Imagine Siri, you punch a Siri button on your iPhone, you're probably touching 100, 150 computers. Imagine if every small business could do that.
Right.
Everyone would have a Siri, everyone would have some distributed language cluster or whatever it is that you needed because you could.
Is Microsoft and Google, or Microsoft and Google making a viable play in the cloud or not?
They're determined to.
Okay.
They're really determined to, and they understand the impact on their business if they don't, and the opportunity if they do. Other players like IBM, Dell, and HP are in that bucket. But particularly Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. Microsoft have got a great enterprise base.
Yeah.
Imagine
People love Azure. I mean, we have the launch ticker running on Azure, and it's super stable, and a lot of developers love it.
There's a real split. In where we come from, Portland, people don't talk to people up on the hill, and you don't know what they're doing. And it's the same in the startup world. We're very LAMP focused, very open source. There's a bunch of very talented engineers working in finance and bigger companies in .NET. It's had 20 years. There's billions of dollars put into that whole ecosystem, and it's actually pretty effective.
Right. So do you work on Azure as well, or?
We use Azure for some. We're actually pretty distributed. We work with a lot of our partners to do some of our stack. The Google Compute Engine is the most interesting right now.
And what is that called now? The Google Compute Engine.
GCE was Google. I've seen Google Compute Services now.
What was the original name of it, though?
You're talking about Google App Engine, maybe?
App Engine, right.
That's a different product.
Okay.
That's a kind of subset of Java
Right.
that they host.
Right.
GCE.
That's like their Heroku kind of.
Kind of, yeah. This is GCE's like Amazon Web Services. Here's an instance. You can install what you want on it.
GCE.
Google Compute Engine.
And is that freely available? Are people using it?
It's in a kind of semi-public beta right now.
Yeah.
They're giving credits to startups. If you're interested, you can probably find a web page where they're offering you some credit to explore with it.
Huh. And how viable is it versus Amazon, do you think?
Well, it's the next generation of technology. So it's got a bunch of stuff. Amazon can take up to 5-6 minutes to stand up an instance, and Google is showing demos of 500 instances in under a minute.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's the next gen. They haven't got 1 million customers to support. So it's easy to innovate when you're in that space. Google seems to be going after the performance business, the web scale. And they say things like embrace the table scan. We'll take care of that for you. So it's a very interesting product technically, and they've got some very smart people working on it.
So the highest end sites might really want the Google.
Well, even the very scaling sites, if you think of how like Instagram or Pinterest, we could easily see them on it, or the next generation of that. And I think Amazon will inevitably, adapt their technology or introduce new products that will compete against that.
What about speed? I mean, people complain Amazon isn't the fastest of all services, and that's the one thing I hear from a lot of ops people is, hey, if you really want to compete on speed, you're not going to use an Amazon. You might use them for some things, but you're really going to get your own racks, and you're going to just rack them and stack them.
I think
is that true or not?
Yeah, that's a hole with no bottom. And there's a lot of people who say that because they only know how to do what they're doing and they don't know how to do it on the cloud. If you take, for example, when Google introduced search and you press the next button, and there's a possibility that the entry on the bottom of the first page is at the top of the second page. That used to really irritate me at first.
Right.
But that's how they eliminated state. And by eliminating state, they have major scale. And I think there's still a lot of people out there who are not used to that world.
Explain that in English to people.
So what it meant was that traditionally you do a search, and the computer has to remember where you are in the results.
Right.
So you press the next button, and it has to show you results 11 through 20. That means it has to save all the results from that search.
Right.
And you have to, most importantly, be routed back to that computer to show them the next page.
Right.
What Google pioneered was training people to accept that when you press the next button, you ran another query. So you ran the query twice. The first query, all the results were thrown away. And because you ran it twice, the results might be slightly different. Now, that's a problem if you're going through a list of ledger entries in a bank account.
Right.
But it's not if you're going through a search engine.
Right. It's a hard problem. It's a real problem in a small subset. But if you're on Facebook or you're on your Twitter stream, it's not the end of the world.
If you miss one or two tweets or you have a couple of them twice.
Right. Not the end of the world.
Right. So you could choose.
But that saves a ton of computing.
It just means that you can scale by having more instead of bigger computers. And there's still a lot of people out there. There are very good reasons to go for a bigger computer, but there are still many people who we feel are going for a bigger computer when they don't need to, only because they've never seen it done with more instead of bigger.
And more computers with less firepower.
Right.
Cheaper to set up, cheaper to manage, or
cheaper to scale.
Cheaper to scale.
No single big clump of Oracle and NetApp in the middle, for example.
Right.
Now, it's kind of wasteful because it's not. You're doing a lot of work you don't need to do. You could optimize that work out, but the computers are cheaper than the people. The computers are cheaper than waiting to have a ramp up. Right. Or the problems you have when you have a big single knot at the middle. And this is the debate about web scale.
Right. Thanks so much to our friends at New Relic for sponsoring This Week in Startups. We use the program here to check on the uptime of the launch ticker, which is a fabulous product if you haven't seen it, if I do say so myself. But a lot of people rely on it. And uptime and speed is critical for all web apps. If you look at Marissa and the job she's doing at Yahoo, she took the Google playbook of speed and performance. Those are your best features. And she applied it to Yahoo, and all of a sudden their page views went up, 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 up. And the user experience got better, and people are all of a sudden talking about this great Yahoo comeback. A big part of that Yahoo comeback is based upon performance and speed. Responsiveness is critical. Instagram did the same thing. They made sure their app was super responsive, and they kicked everybody's butt in the mobile photo space. New Relic is one of those great tools that 40,000 customers are using. Skullcandy, Spotify, Nike, Zillow, Vonage, all the great companies use it. And you can monitor real-time user experience, as you can see on my screen now. The code-level app performance, so is Ruby slowing you down, or is it your database? Is it your transport layer? Is it your servers? Are you out of memory? Just soup to nuts. It tells you about performance. It's super affordable, and developers across the spectrum trust this their critical performance to the apps, to New Relic. If you want super visibility into your web and mobile apps, sign up today to get your free This Week in Startups t-shirt. Go to newrelic.com/twist, newrelic, RELIC.com/twist. It's a great high-growth startup themselves, and they have really done an awesome job Again, we use it here. It's super fast, super easy, and no credit card is required. Get in there and try it and get that free This Week in Startups t-shirt that you can only get from New Relic because they're such super fans of the show themselves. They love the startups on the program. newrelic.com/twist. And thank them. Thank you at New Relic on Twitter. I really appreciate my super fans who thank the sponsors on Twitter, just including that, hey, I love this episode, and then you just put at New Relic at the end. Really savvy idea. Okay, thanks again, New Relic. We're seeing a lot of the software is getting much more advanced and able, whatever it's Nginx or a lot of these services are able to really scale gracefully over large swaths of computers.
Do you remember building Apache in the late 90s and you had to do your own kernel and compile at the right options? You know, there are a lot of stuff in the cloud that's still at that stage and people are forecasting what it will be in 10 years. But it's coming. It's just when.
And what do you think the big ground-shaking event will be in cloud computing? Is there a moment that people are predicting or you would predict, 3, 4, 5 years out that'll really disrupt cloud computing?
I think it will come without people really noticing it. I remember in 94, 98 working on 2 different projects at Pepsi, building projects, and the 94 building had its own data center. And the 98 building rented a space around the corner. And if in either meeting I'd suggested the opposite, I would have been laughed off the table. Somewhere between the two, it became the norm to not run your own computer center. And something like that's going to happen, where for new projects, it's going to be silly to go buy a bunch of hardware.
Right.
Just get it going on the cloud first. We'll move it into our private cloud or our base load when we really understand what's going on.
Right.
And I think that's what will happen. It will take tools from Microsoft to make it easy. It will take Google being in there alongside Amazon to prompt even more. I think Amazon and Google right now are in a race for more features rather than for more ease of use. And I think you'll see them go back over their products and make them easier to use.
We're getting to the point where developers are able to do the ops themselves. DevOps, I guess.
Or no ops, as some people say.
Is no ops?
Oh, we have no ops at Cloudability.
Really?
Yeah. So our developers write scripts in a tool with the GitHub have provided called Hubot. And now when we want to do deployments, we do it in our chat channel.
Wow.
So everyone can see what's going on. New guys can learn how to do it. And when there's something that we can't...
What, like in HipChat or something?
Yeah, HipChat. That's what we use.
Yeah.
And
we use HipChat too.
Yeah, we love it.
Hey, take a memo. Gina, let me get HipChat on the program. It's a good company. They sold, right? Somebody bought HipChat, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I can't remember. But there's so many of those.
Yeah, you can, in HipChat, just so people to explain a little background, HipChat is very popular amongst the developer crowd. And when you're pushing code or using Pivotal Tracker or whatever, it will put those updates into the chat room automatically. So you're saying when you deploy servers...
We should go on. We go, Hubot, deploy server. Or Hubot, take a copy of this. Or Hubot, what's on tap at the local bar? We've wired in the API from the local bar in Portland.
Genius.
Yeah. So it means that everyone can learn those commands by seeing other people use them. They know what's going on in our environment. We don't need a bunch of guys in a back room who are the only people who know how it works. We all contribute.
Fascinating. So if you're successful, you've been at this for 2 or 3 years? How long is...
2.5 years since we were incorporated, but 3 years since I wrote the first line of code.
I mean, this was so early to think of this idea. Was this the original idea, or was there a different idea at the beginning?
It was an accident. I quit my job to move to Portland. My wife wanted to move home. I got sick. I called up some friends.
I knew that was a Portland accent, by the way.
Yes, I often say that. Better than Vancouver. People
Portland via Brighton.
Right, that's right. So, I got sick, so I called up friends to get some work. And the work was to help them get on the cloud. I'd had some prior experience at a previous job. And because they were friends, when they complained about the cost, I couldn't ignore them. Couldn't bill them $400.
Right.
So I wrote Cloudability to get them off my back. It was an email they got every day. And when it broke, they all complained. And I ignored them again because I was busy and it was free. Then their bosses started calling. And when the bosses started calling, they were all emotional. One CEO, she threatened to sue me. She said, I'm sure it's in our contract that you have to provide this. And that's when I knew that, hang on, this is a lot more pain than I realized. And as a tech guy, I'd always been trying to get my arms around this stuff.
Right.
So, and we were actually...
What did the email say? It just said, this is what you're spending, this is what you're not using?
No, he said, this is what you're spending. No, just this is what you spent.
So yesterday. You basically made like a little cron job to tell people what they were spending off of their log files in Python.
I scraped the screens off Amazon.
And now this business has raised $10 million from great, great investors, and you're probably doing millions of dollars in business, I can assume?
Yeah.
20 employees, 30 employees?
22 with 6 vacancies. We'll be probably 50 plus by end of next year.
Isn't it amazing how a startup can just come from like this little throwaway feature you made just to get those annoying clients off your back?
Yeah, but you're fulfilling a need.
Right. It is a really good test. if I turned off this service,
Right.
how would you replace it?
Exactly.
Or how important would it be
Well,
to
how
you?
many people would complain?
Or how many people would complain?
How quickly would they complain? Everyone complained within a week.
Well, that's what happens with a lot of services. Like, the service, when Pounce went down or this went down,
Right.
people turn things off. All of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, Google Reader is so important to me.
Right, exactly.
It's like, well, would you pay for Google Reader? Is it that important? That's what Google should have done. Google should have said, Google Reader is not shutting down. It's moving to paid.
But isn't it interesting? Because all the other products they shut down, you didn't really hear much about.
No, that's a very good point. So there was a vocal minority who really
Right.
did love that. I wonder if they made the product $49 a year or $5 a month, $10 a
I would
month.
have paid that.
People would have paid it. I probably would have, just because I'm like, I go into it once in a while.
Right,
I like the
exactly.
search feature
Yeah.
or whatever.
But that's by the way, that's an interesting thing about Google Compute Engine. It's one of their biggest headwinds. Big users are going, well, you can be around in 3 years' time. If I build a lot of Hubot scripts around Google Compute Engine, and then you say, hey, we're retiring it, because people don't understand the core need. They understand that Amazon is trying to understand what you're doing, so they can do that too, and maybe provide more value that way.
You're talking about why Amazon has Amazon Web Services, why it exists.
Right. They're very interested in what everyone's doing, and if they can do it too, then great. And it's a very valuable set of research data of what people are finding important and valuable to do on the web.
Do they break out how much revenue that's making for them?
No, it's one of the industry topics of wonderful speculation.
What do you think they're making? Because I remember they weren't breaking it out, just like they don't break out Amazon Prime.
Everyone who knows this number, the real number, pay attention. I think it's going to be $3 billion this year.
You believe $3 billion?
Yeah. So we see two things. We have analysts talk about the low and high, and they try and deduce it from this kind of amorphous number. And then we also are managing about $550 million of spending on Amazon.
Huh.
So it's actually about 500 on Amazon. So we get to see the trends on that and how they're growing. And we talk to customers about their plans. And of course, Amazon are very liberal with the logos of using it.
Yep.
So stacking up the gaps, we think it's about $3 billion.
$3 billion.
By the end of this year.
And what do you think their margin is on each client? 10%? 5%?
That's much dodgier. So
You got to think they're going less than 20%, certainly, because that's how just Amazon thinks.
the CTO of a competitor, ProfitBricks, Andreas, he did a great breakdown of this the other day. And he said their gross margins are 90%.
What?
Now, that didn't take into account the stuff that wasn't used. The usage levels are very important to know because you want to know how much stuff isn't being used, so you're paying for that too.
Right.
And obviously, there's a lot of coverage in the middle of the night. We can see that by the spot pricing. But I think they're maybe as high as 20%. I think as an org, they're kind of not comfortable with that, above 20%. So I think they'd start cutting if it went much over.
Which means it's going to be very hard for anybody to viably compete against them unless they have the scale of a Google.
Or they don't have to pay all the licensing fees up front, like, for example, Dell, HP, IBM, any of the manufacturers. So when I buy an Intel chip from you, I have to pay all the fees, all the intellectual property, all the research and development, all I have to pay for up front. But the manufacturers of hardware could put that equipment in and amortize that. So you could fill out a 1 million square foot building much cheaper than someone has to buy the hardware at retail.
Got it. So HP as a cloud provider would be viable.
If they could get the software to work. The thing, cloud isn't just about hardware, it's hardware, software, and processes.
Right.
You're outsourcing the process, and that's the hardest thing, I think, to get right. You're seeing some very successful companies like Piston Cloud. They're deploying private OpenStack very well, and that's because they've got the process down pat. So it's not just knowing where the software is, they can leave you with a viable running installation.
Right.
IBM historically been very good at that for their own products and things. So that's the missing glue.
How is Google going to convince everybody that they're not going to shut down GCE when Larry Page or whoever decides they got to sunset 5 products?
The same way Amazon persuaded people to move their business on the cloud in the first place by making it just that much better. That you can't resist the temptation.
Right. And how hard is it going to be to move between clouds, do you think?
That's a really big problem right now. There's 2 types of companies we see. Those who've scripted everything, got a strong DevOps culture, use tools like Puppet, and it's a script. And for them, it's trivial to move the code. The data's the big challenge.
Right.
And they do backups off-site, but it's really physically it's a challenge. Then there's everybody else, the other 90%. They're building the servers by hand. Dave built that server. He's not with us anymore. We're not sure we could rebuild it.
Right.
They're stuck. But if you take the $3 billion as a reasonable estimate, that's less than 0.1% of global IT spending. There's a lot of stuff to move on to the cloud. And I think we'll see that next projects that coming out of companies will be bigger and much better deployed So in 3 to 5 years' time, I think it will be routine for you to be able to easily deploy anywhere. And the problem then is going to be about the data gravity.
And the reason why things like Instagram are able and Pinterest are able to grow the way they grow is because of the cloud. Those services would not have been able to have the flawless scale they had.
They also have a very simple app.
That's true,
It's
too.
a very stateless app. It's
Yeah.
serving up images. It doesn't really matter which
fair
server
point.
you go to. And yeah, you you crank the dial up to 11 when you've got a lot of users.
Right.
Brilliant. You can scale like no one's ever scaled before. I think what's much more interesting is watching a company like Adobe, who've done their Creative Cloud. It's a much more complex, multi-component deployment, involving state, involving people's things that are valuable to them.
Yeah.
If I lost a few pictures on Instagram, that wouldn't be such a big deal. But if I lost some of my assets on Creative Cloud,
Yeah, brutal.
So I think they're showing the way. Netflix, of course, are the pioneers in this space.
See, Dropbox started building their own data centers, right? Because they couldn't make the margins work on S3.
There are going to be providers who are so big that it's totally worth them doing it.
Right.
But I think that bar is going to get bigger and bigger. Toyota don't make their own car seats anymore. They used to own cows and paint and spring making machines.
Did they really? I had no
But
idea.
Ford used to have rubber plants in the Amazon forest
Yeah.
to make rubber. Now they buy it ready-made. And I think that's just a trend you'll see faster on software.
All right, listen, this has been an amazing. I thought I was just going to get Matt to explain his company, but you gave us a really great overview of the entire cloud. Matt Ellis, the Ricky Gervais of cloud computing. Thanks for coming on the program. I kept looking at you going, if this guy got 5 o'clock shadow, I feel like I'm sitting across from Ricky.
You're not the first person to.
You get that often?
Him and Michael McIntyre.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, on a good day, I get James Spader. On a bad day, I get Rick Schroeder.
Yeah, well,
The adult version of Ricky Schroeder.
At least I don't talk like Ricky Gervais anymore.
Yeah, don't talk about him anymore. Listen, continued success. Everybody check out Cloudability. 1% or 2% of your cloud bill.
We have a free product too.
It's free
Yeah.
if you're spending under what?
If you just want to have the simple features.
Oh, yeah. So simple features. There's a feature gate, if you will. He feature gates it as opposed to usage gates it. Why not usage gate it? Why not say if it's above a $5,000 bill, you pay 1%?
If you're spending less than a few $1,000s a month, all you need to know is you're not going to have a massive overage at the end of the month.
That's
so
true.
you're not over 20 grand or something. And if you're spending more than that, you want to know the details so you can optimize it.
Exactly. So why wouldn't you 1% of your bill? Who cares? Everybody follow at Matt Ellis, MatteLLis, and go check out Cloudability. And it's really great. Wow, $10 million raised, and the users in their system have spent over $500 million on cloud services. That's incredible. Continued success. And which Techstars did you come out of? I forgot to ask you
Techstars
that.
Cloud. We were in
Techstars Cloud.
The
That
inaugural
was
cloud
the
class.
Texas one?
Yeah, in 2012.
Where was it, in Dallas or Houston?
San Antonio. We commuted there every
San
weekend.
Antonio. You commuted there from where?
From Portland, Oregon, 2,000 miles each way.
It is. It's like going across country, except
Oh,
you're
yeah.
going the wrong
yeah.
way. Is there a flight that goes that direction?
Nope.
So what do you have to go to Phoenix or something?
You go to Denver, Phoenix, or Las Vegas.
And you had to go. The worst part is you had to go to Texas.
Well, San Antonio's lovely. It's
I
really
don't know
nice.
about San Antonio being lovely.
Oh, it's hot. But
That Riverwalk.
you get the best bits of Mexico. The food's awesome. The people
I will
are
say
lovely.
the Mexican food there is good, but
Yeah.
that Riverwalk, as Charles Barkley would say, is a little nasty. I wouldn't want to fall in that Riverwalk.
Well, we were too busy working, so we didn't see that.
You didn't go to the river. If you fall in that Riverwalk, I think you come out.
They've
with
even got a
like,
SeaWorld, man. The SeaWorld.
Oh, there's a SeaWorld there? Oh, you hit
and
hit
there's-
my button. I'm an anti-SeaWorld
and the
guy.
Alamo as well.
I have been to the Alamo.
Right.
If you ever go to the Alamo, check out the basement. Amazing. You don't know that reference?
No.
There's a in
Is
Pee
this
Wee.
diorama?
You know Pee Wee Herman?
Yeah, yeah.
So Pee Wee Herman, they send Pee Wee Herman to the Alamo to get his bicycle or something in one of the movies, and they tell him it's in the basement.
Right.
There's no basement to the Alamo.
Right.
So he gets to the Alamo, and he's like, "Where's the basement?" The guy's like, "There's no basement to the Alamo."
It's really small.
But if it's tiny, but
Yeah.
it's a really great thing to go see. And and speaking of SeaWorld, do not go to SeaWorld. Do not take your kids to SeaWorld. Do not work at SeaWorld. Do not support SeaWorld. Go see the movie Blackfish. That's my documentary for you guys to see, Blackfish. And if anybody has video, I'm going to go a little political rant. If anybody has video of that Dawn Barber being attacked tragically, I'm willing to pay you. What should I pay, Brandis? To make it public. Couple dimes? I say $10,000 if you get me that video and make it public. $25,000 if somebody gets the Blackfish video of Dawn. And I don't want everybody to see Dawn Barber being shredded and ripped apart by the Orcatilicum for no reason. I really think that we're torturing these poor animals, and the movie Blackfish really outlines in detail how incredibly social intelligent these animals are. And it's just really tragic, and it really affects me deeply. So if you have that video, I will pay you I'll donate $25,000, whatever you want me to do. I'll give you $25,000 in 5s and 10s on marketable bills. Just release that video. All right. Right about now, Matt's going, what the hell is he talking about? I just came here to talk about my goddamn startup.
I haven't even been to SeaWorld.
It's not your fault. Listen, it's ostensibly a delightful thing, but it really is, how you treat the species that you're dominant over says something about you, and putting those poor, big, beautiful creatures into tiny habitats is just terrible. Heartbreaking. One thing that's not heartbreaking, Cloudability. Go check it out. Thanks for coming on the program, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yep.